Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. We've got a treat today. We're going to talk a little bit about Colombia, and anybody that's listening to this show before knows that Colombia has a special place in my heart, and it's actually where I'm at right now. Today, we've got Brian Schon. He's the co-founder and president of True Colombia Travel and Cannua. Did I say all that right, Brian?
That's perfect, Jason. Thank you so much.
We practiced a little bit before I hit record, and I'm happy that we got that straight. So it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
No, it's an honor and pleasure on my end. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, you're actually in Colombia?
I am. I live right outside Medellin, and I've been here for about 10 and a half years.
Yep. So you're pretty close to me. I'm in Envigado, which is basically Medellin. It's part of Medellin. Mm-hmm. So I'm embarrassed that we haven't met in person yet, but I suspect that will change really, really soon. So in the meantime, we're doing kind of a virtual thing. I can see you on the screen, and it's a pleasure to meet you this way.
Absolutely. No, it's my pleasure. And I lived in Envigado for 6 years. It's a wonderful place as well.
Pretty great, isn't it? Yeah. We're going to go off on a tangent here, but you said just outside of Medellin. So tell us more about that. Where are you?
So I live up in Rio Negro. So a lot of people, actually, this is interesting. This is good. People should know this. There are 2 airports in Medellin. There's the international airport, which is up here in Rio Negro. And then there's the municipal airport, which is down in the city. Here's the confusing thing. The name of the international airport here is Jose Maria Cordova. So everybody here calls it Jose Maria or Jose Maria Cordova, which has the code JMC. But the actual airport code is MDE. So when people are flying in, they're flying into Jose Maria Cordova. That is not in the city. It is actually about 45 minutes outside of the city. The airport that is in the city, Olaya Herrera, is only used for the shorter flights. They're generally with one exception. They're generally, prop flights to go out to the Pacific coast or to go to smaller cities or smaller airports.
Right.
Anyways, I live about 15 minutes from the airport.
You do? Okay. Very familiar. Well, I don't know if I should say I'm very familiar with Rio Negro, but it's beautiful. I understand up there. Little cooler weather for one, or laid back.
Exactly.
Lifestyle, I guess. And we may get into that further. But anyway, so for our listeners, just real quick, let's give them the 30-second elevator pitch for kind of, what is True Colombia Travel? What is Cannua?
Yeah.
Give us the 30-second elevator pitch, and then we're going to go back and ask you, and then we'll get back to.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to steal 30 seconds from you on each side. So True Colombia Travel is a full DMC operator. We do custom FIT trips and white label trips throughout the entire country of Colombia. We are one of only 2 virtuoso DMCs in Colombia, and we are particularly known for doing things that you just can't find. We spend a lot of our time doing research, investigation, and we go to a lot of places that other people just don't have access to. They're not touristic destinations. They're places that have opened just to us. And our main goal is that everybody who comes to Colombia says, wow, that is one of the best countries I have ever visited. We are just constantly looking for those wow moments and the most authentic places you can visit. There is a ton of misnomer with Colombia and things that people think that are authentic or important and just aren't. And so we're constantly looking for those things that are under the auspices that they're not our vacations, they're not our trips, they're other people's trips. So we're looking to make it perfect for them. So that was a little more than 30 seconds.
Very cool. And I want to expand on that a little bit because we've got a wide variety of people to the show. So just real quick, let's understand what you mentioned three things. FIT,
yes,
and white label. So
correct.
Just real quick, bring us up to what that all.
Okay. A DMC is a destination management company. Basically, travel advisors, people who are looking to plan trips all over the world, can't be experts in everywhere. So they look to companies like ours. We're experts in Colombia and we operate everything. So when our travelers come to visit Colombia, we don't want them having to think or worry about anything that has to do with logistics. We want them just having an amazing time. So we literally manage the entire trip for them. What makes us a little bit particular is that a lot of the companies like ours don't actually do the operations. They just make a lot of the relationships, but we do. We operate the entire country. Our staff takes care of just about everything. We try to subcontract as least as possible. Obviously, there's certain things like we have our own fleet of vehicles here in Medellin, but we don't necessarily in other places, but we have relationships with companies that we've been working with for years and years and years. So we're the ones who make sure that trips are seamless and that clients have 24/7 contacts and people who are making sure that everything are perfect. So in real time. So if somebody needs, a new reservation, if they want to stay somewhere longer or less time or whatever, we're making sure that everything is settled at that moment and making sure that everything on their trip is taken care of.
FIT. I've heard people say like boots on the ground, or you could say you guys are the ones operating the trips. In a sense, you're not selling and you're not marketing and selling directly to the person taking the trip, but you're handling all the operations. Obviously, you do some sales, and when you do sales and marketing, it's directed towards other businesses that then are handling the sales for the actual traveler. Say that, right?
No, okay. I think that's perfect. There are small occasions where we do direct to client sales, but I mean, that's probably 1% of our business, and it usually happens to do with very specific cases. But that's right. We're generally operating for other business. Literally, fit travel, which we call it, literally is just industry term for bespoke or custom made. So we try to custom build every itinerary to each traveler based on their likes and dislikes, and that's just a fancy way for saying that.
Which and almost like to say what an FIT is not a, hey, we've got a big bus that picks up everybody on Tuesday, and we've got 32 spots. You're welcome to book one in. We're going to do this itinerary the same and come back and drop you off the following week. That would be a group trip,
right?
As opposed to an FIT. I don't really like. I'll be vulnerable. I always thought it was for individual travelers. I don't really actually know what FIT stands for, and I'm not going to ask you if you know, but it's just always called FIT. FIT for individual travelers. So
I feel like I knew at one point, and I forgot.
But we know how to do it, so that's all that matters. All right,
it just means private and custom made. That's
yep. Okay, cool.
And then
you mentioned white label, which kind of almost ties the two together, right? Or, well, you tell me.
It can. So about 10% of what we do is under the label of other companies. We'll be doing, that's going to go up this year because we have a major, very exciting contract coming in. But that basically means that, another company has their name on the trip. It could be that they've designed or stamped what they want for the itinerary, and then we just actually operate it. So for example, we work with a couple of very well-known photographers, and they come down a couple times a year where they bring invite-only clients with them. And we have co-constructed the itinerary that they want along with them. And it's under the name of the photographers. They're technically the trip leaders, and they're the ones who sort of direct everything, but we're the ones who take care of all the transport. We often have guides to add, extra context or information to things. We make sure that the trip runs seamlessly, but it's under their name, which is totally fine by us as well.
Okay, which is kind of almost more like group trip, but they're putting the group together themselves. When they show up, they're leading the trip. The transfer driver that picks them up maybe even has their company name on the side of the van, magnet or something. I'm not saying that that's how you have to do it, but that's kind of the concept.
Right. So it can be that, or it can also be, sometimes you have really well-known travel advisors who want, their specific name on something. They want to say like, this is, I'm just going to make up a name. We'll just use a sort of a Colombian name.
Good luck picking something that hasn't been used. Go ahead.
We'll say like Felipe Jaramillo wants to have their Felipe Jaramillo trip. and they've got, a family that's coming down and they want to say, look, this is offered by me for you. That's fine. We've oftentimes said we're the, ground team for company X, and that's not untrue. I have very, very, very good relationships and close relationships with a lot of the agents and agencies that we work with. And that's important. We're really committed to long-term relationships.
So that could look like on one day you meet a group and you're Felipe, whatever that company mentioned. It's like, yes, I am the transfer driver of company.
Exactly.
And then the next day you might show up and meet some more clients and you're the transfer
for another one,
a different company, as opposed to maybe a tour operator in the US or a travel planner in the US that puts together a group. Obviously, their branding is all over their website and all everything, but then they send the trip planner and they say, we've partnered with, True Colombia Travel. So we're going to have a representative from True Colombia Travel there you up. And so it's just, the experience should still be the same, right?
What's important to note, what's important to keep in mind, and I think this is part of the recipe of success, is whether our name is on it or not. Doesn't matter. But it is. But no. What I want to say is actually the opposite. It's we are stewards or representatives of whoever is the face to the client. So if we get travel advisors who are very clearly like, look, I'm working with True Colombia, and that's fine. But I'm not the hero. At the end of the day, it is the travel advisor who's going to be booking this client for another country in the future. And so I am the team of this person, and my job is to make sure that they have one of the best trips of their lives, but that credit goes to the travel advisor who steered them to coming here to working with us.
I'm happy you clarified that, because that wasn't actually what I was thinking when I say your name's on it anyway. It's okay. The client may not see your name, may not make the connection, whatever. You're representing a tour operator back home to book them.
Mm-hmm.
And the tour operator that is back home that booked them is your client.
Right.
So you got them either way because that's your client also. It's kind of weird. We have two levels of clients. So you better do a good job. You better treat that client at least as well as somebody that books directly with you, or somebody that, there's all different scenarios. But I think what you mentioned was great. It was like, we want to make sure they go home having a great weather.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you've got a passion for Colombia as well. And like you said earlier, you want to make sure that.
Right. And there's a lot of pressure to that. We get very high-end clients. We get people who spend exorbitant sums of money to come travel and see the best. And that creates a lot of pressure. Every single time that we have a group, it's like putting a theater production together, and we have to reprove ourselves to whomever that advisor or company is back in country X. They trust us, which is why they brought us another client, but it just takes one bad one to lose that trust. So every single time we're reproving ourselves, and it's great. It's exciting. And there's also a lot of stress involved.
Well, and doing it, because I've been on kind of both a couple different sides of this. When you're partnered with a travel agent home, there's that interdependence between the two of you. You two need to work well together as well.
Absolutely.
Setting expectations is like everything. Root of all disappointment, expectation. So you've got these expectations, and how do you communicate with the client? How does maybe a tour operator has never even been to Colombia, and they're the one on the phone having these conversations about what to expect, what kind of thing to do. So it's like a magical thing that when it comes together that, as I'm sure, I guess I want to ask you this question, because sometimes it's really hard for some, I'm curious what your experience is. Some agents are like, hey, this is a great friend of mine, or this is a great client of mine. I've sent them on a bunch of trips. This is kind of the type of thing that they want to do. But I'm perfectly happy having you have a conversation with them to vet it, discuss expectation. And so can I set up maybe a 3-way call, a video call or something like that? And then you've got other travel agents. No, I don't want you to have any connection with my client whatsoever. Like, I'm going to tell them that it's True Colombia when they get there. I'm going to tell them that we've partnered with True Colombia, but I don't want you to talk to them until they get there, because I don't want anything coming in between a relationship with them. But of course, in reality, that's fine. But in reality, that client's going to come spend a week with you and your team, and you're going to develop a tremendous relationship because hopefully they're having a lot of fun and and maybe they've never actually met this travel agent in person anyway. So I'm curious what your thoughts are if a travel, because I believe there's a lot of agents that listen to the show. If you're speaking, let's imagine we've got a travel agent listening and has strong opinions one way or the other. Strong opinions are just, I'm sure, but what would you like to say to a new travel agent when it comes to how do you handle that?
Wow, what a loaded question.
I know it is. You're a smart guy. You'll figure out how to
No, absolutely.
But I think it's important for people to see a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, and I haven't addressed Cannua yet, which also gives me a different perspective into things. What I will say is it's a strange industry, and there's a lot that is based on honor system, and there's a lot that's based on like, I'm going to trust you to do something, or I'm trusting you because somebody that I trust told me things. And I think that there are a lot of sort of internal unspoken culture, I don't want to call them culture wars, but sort of cultural issues that occur. What do I mean by that? A lot of agencies and advisors are affiliated with a bunch of different brands and sort of umbrella agencies within the world, right? Those umbrella agencies also have their own cultures. And those cultures change over time. Sometimes they're more cutthroat. Sometimes they're more, communal. Sometimes they get acquired by other countries and by other companies, and those things change over time. And so within those, you get agents that have different cultures that they're used to working with. And sometimes those are more trusting and sometimes they're less trusting. I've had travel advisors where I have to be like, hey, look, we really need the last name, right? Or like, I can't put them on this flight or this boat if I don't have their passport. Like it's just not going to happen, and then we're going to have problems. And then there's others where like we'll call each other up. I had an advisor call me up a couple of days ago just to kind of like shoot the breeze and see how things are going, right? And those are the best, and I can assure that they're going to have an amazing trip. But I get it. A lot of advisors either they don't know me or they don't know Colombia, which is very common. And they're used to working in a lot of other countries where things are a lot more. And a lot of these people have been burned before. And when you're working with a lot of the clients, where, a lot of these clients, sometimes they fly in on charters or sometimes they're chartering within the country. I mean, and that's just this element, right? This is their vacation money. So you imagine the world that these clients are coming from, where the smallest thing can be a giant bomb going off, right? Like I've had clients get upset because there's no space for a reservation at a restaurant in X city in Colombia, and they'll be like, make somebody else cancel the reservation. But I get it. There's a lot of people who come from that world, and that's not everything. That's the exception, right? But it happens. And so I get why there is that tension. I get why there is that sort of sometimes lack of trust or needing to build that up. What I would say on our end is, again, like our goal is to make that other company or that other advisor the hero. And I'm just looking for the data that we need in order to make sure that their trip is absolutely outstanding. And we try to be as transparent as we can with absolutely everything. And that's what I would say on that side. So the goal is to try and put people at ease.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned a lot of the importance, and some of it's just etiquette. We can call it etiquette, but my idea of etiquette might be different. We know that you're living in Colombia. I'm living in Colombia. I wasn't born and raised here. And sometimes I get reminded, oh, wait a minute. You have to say, good morning. How are you? Before you jump into anything, you got to wait for them to respond. I'm well, very well. Thank God. And how are you? And you got to have that back and forth. And I'm typical. Let's just jump to the point.
Well, and I apologize for interrupting. And this is one thing that's important for a lot of people to understand, and they don't sometimes get it, is that's how it is here in the Andes, right? But the coast is a different world. Yeah, so, people will talk, let's use the United States for an example, right? There's a big cultural difference between the West Coast and the East Coast and the South. But there's still a lot of norms that exist throughout the United States, right? In Colombia, Cartagena and Santa Marta are totally different than Medellin or Bogota, which are totally different than, say, Pasto or San Agustin, which are totally different from the Pacific coast or the islands. And so there's things that are, the language is different, the slang is different, and then the style of work is different. So like, yeah, you pressure me and you need to know if there's availability at a hotel in Medellin, I'll get back to you later today or tomorrow. The best hotel in Cartagena may not get back to me till next week, right?
Yeah.
That can be difficult.
Which actually reinforces the value of somebody like you're doing this. I think a lot of people, maybe they haven't been to Latin America or they haven't been to, even then they're like, yeah, I probably don't really want to try and put this together myself. But the people that have spent time and even understand even more why you yourself, and it's saving them. You have such a better experience. I've wandered around a lot of places myself, but that's just because of some of my own life choices around money.
Yeah. I think what happens with Colombia is it depends on how much you want to get out of your trip and in what amount of time. So there's places you can go, but you're just a hard country to navigate. And there's not a lot of other language besides Spanish. And so to learn about a place is difficult. There's not good signage. There's not good guidance, and you're very likely to get lost. So if you're okay losing a couple of days on your trip and that's part of the experience too, I mean, that's one thing.
Your threshold.
Well, if you're an executive who's got 10 days a year to do vacation with your family, you don't want to take that risk. Like, you're not going to mess around because you've got to make sure it's perfect because that's your vacation for the year.
Right.
And we internalize that pressure. Like, I know what they're giving up in order to come visit our country. And it's an honor to have those people here. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have executives. We didn't have ambassadors. We didn't have celebrities. We didn't have bankers coming to visit. We didn't have a lot of high-end retirees who wanted to know about the deepest parts of the culture. And so to be able to change the perception of Netflix and the news and all of that is to us, it's part of the mission. It's part of the draw of doing what we do.
That's very cool. Let's jump on. Let's look forward to Cannua and we're going to try and do the 30-second. I'll try not to ask you too many questions. We're going to come back to Cannua, but I want to really get back into your history, figure out how you got to the point.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
Give us the 30.
Cannua is Colombia's first high-end sustainable eco lodge. It's the first hotel in the world built primarily out of compressed earth bricks that we made on site from the same soil that we're on. It's one of the most sustainable hotels in South America. It is designed and built based off of permaculture principles. Our restaurant, which is mostly fed by vegetables and some fruits that we grow on site or purchased locally, has twice been a finalist for the best restaurant in Colombia. We are a National Geographic Experiences Collection hotel. We are listed in the Michelin Guide, and we are a Mr. and Mrs. Smith hotel as well. And we are located up in a North Andean cloud forest, about an hour and a half outside of Medellin, or about 45 minutes from the international airport.
That's very, very good. What's permaculture?
Great question. The concept is so important and so difficult that every reservation comes included with our permaculture talk, where we give the base of the philosophy. I'll tell you what it is in a second. And we also walk around the entire property, seeing how we've reforested, tasting all sorts of crazy, strange plants, learning about the impact that we've had on attracting animals back to the property and stuff like that. So permaculture at its core is a design philosophy based on the observation of nature. So it turns out that most modern forms of design, especially construction, are based on imposing human will to the environment around them. And while that might be fast, it's not efficient, and it is not long lasting. And so permaculture looks to see how we can work with nature. And the idea is to regenerate soils and regenerate the world so that we don't run out of resources. So the part of the focus with Cannua was to be able to show that sustainability could be high end, and that you didn't have to sacrifice luxury in order to have responsible travel.
Okay, very cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, so we're going to come back to that, I'm sure. How the heck do you get to this spot in your life? I don't know how far we need to go back. People always hear me say, how far should we go back? Should we go back to your childhood? Usually it's something in childhood. But you tell me where you'd like to, we don't need to cover every step along the process. But
no, that's okay. Let me give you a 2-minute version. My mother was born.
It's an hour-long podcast. You can get it in 2 minutes.
All right. So my mother was born in a refugee camp in Eastern Europe, and my family grew up in the United States. My dad's side was one generation beyond that. So I'm first generation American on my mom's side, second on my dad. And my parents moved to Arizona, where I was born. And my father was a physician who opened up the first medical clinic on 3 of the Native American reservations in Arizona, including being the first doctor to treat the Havasupai tribe at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And so I sort of grew up under this idea of giving access, doing things, but sort of doing them with the focus of helping people. I left Arizona when I was 18, and I moved to Boston for college and grad school. I was working, I was at a pretty young age, became really well versed in global health systems and in a particular element that was very important to sort of controlling costs. And then I also burned out at a very young age.
Well, what did you, hang on 1 second, because I want to touch on, like, let's just say in high school, where in Arizona were you living?
In Phoenix.
You were, yeah. I actually was in Phoenix before I came here. So
wow. Okay.
We've got a few connections, but
interesting.
Anyway, so like when you were in high school, vision living in a different country or doing anything close to what you're doing? Okay.
Never.
What did you end up going to school for?
I've always been a little bit of I don't know, rebel's the right word, but definitely sort of like going against the grain. My folks wanted me to go to one of the good high schools in Phoenix, and I fought them tooth and nail against that. I really believed in sort of public education and not having sort of that leg up. I went to Central High School, right in this heart of Phoenix. And then, I did fine. I ended up going to a good East Coast school. I went to grad school, and then I burned out. I had, my whole 5, 10, 15-year life plan. For some reason, I thought I would be less burned out moving to Washington, D.C. So I moved there for a couple of years, and I was very, very lucky through a fellowship that I had won. I got to meet some very influential people in my life. And part of that was I was able to spend a short period working for an ex-Secretary of State and an ex-Secretary of Defense of the U.S. And that Secretary of Defense was named Sandy Berger. And I walked into his office one day and I said, Sandy, hey, look, I'm young, I have a great career, and I am burned out, and I'm thinking of quitting everything and joining the Peace Corps. And I went into his office specifically expecting him to talk me out of this. And I barely got the last word out of my mouth, and he said, go. And my eyes opened, and I said, what? Because I would never tell anybody not to. That's amazing. You should absolutely do it. And then he said something that I will just never forget for the rest of my life. He said, look, in life, it's okay to have a point A and a point B, but life is very boring when you go like this, and it is much more successful and interesting when you go like this. And this is interesting because I've met a lot of people in travel, and I'll get to how I got there, but I've met a lot of people in travel who are doing a second career, or who are shifting, or who haven't been satisfied in the first thing that they were doing, which is amazing. So anyways, I went, ended up getting sent to Ukraine, where I was from about 2012 to 2014, when the whole country got evacuated due to conflict that was going on during that period of time. I got back to the United States for a short period. I ended up, through long story, a bunch of different things that happened, back in Arizona. And one day I found myself with an immigrant family who spoke not a lick of English. And I spoke like 14 Mexican curse words I had learned playing baseball growing up. And I was like, I should probably not say these words. Anyways, I had this horrible pain, like very deep inside of me. So this is insane. Like I literally grew up in terrain that we historically, stole from Mexico. My high school was 70% Hispanic. This state has a huge Latino population. And I speak Ukrainian, Russian, and this made up language in Ukrainian and Ukraine. And I can't communicate with, half the people that I grew up with. And so I said, okay. I actually got this amazing job offer back in DC. And I said, no, I said, I don't feel like I can continue with my career until I sort of check this ethical box for me, or something that was important to me. And I decided to come to Colombia. And that was for 3 reasons. One was I didn't understand how a country could change so fast. So this was back in 2014, where in 2007, the city where we live was the most dangerous city on the planet. And now by 2014, it was winning all these international awards for innovation, for travel. And I thought, I need to understand. 2 was obviously the biodiversity was amazing. And then 3, going back to what we do, Colombia at that time, and I believe still, had the lowest English proficiency of any country in South America. And that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted sink or swim. I didn't want to be able to go somewhere where I would find a community or be able to survive. I was like, I'm going to learn the language. I'm going to learn the language.
This resonates. Same thing. I left Arizona. I couldn't speak Spanish at the Medellin, and I kind of knew it was going to be okay. This is great because I'm outgoing. I'm an extrovert, and I don't want to hang out with the expats in a particular part of the city that some expats go. That I just don't want to hang out there. So I'm like, I'm going to go hang out where there's nobody that looks like me, sounds like me, and I will learn Spanish. And
which is also why I moved to Envigado.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Same thing. And I didn't take any classes. I just was like, I'm going to learn the hard way because if I just went to classes, I might learn Spanish. But if I tried to learn Spanish by actually connecting, then I'd be connecting with people and speaking or learning Spanish. So go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Resonates.
I think the one thing that I've learned is people learn languages in different ways, and you have to find what works for you. I definitely have ways that I'm successful learning, ways that I don't, and that I didn't learn until I moved abroad. But anyhow, I had a plan to stay here for 2 months, and those 2 months ran out about 10 and a half years ago.
Yep, I'm on your track.
Yeah. So Colombia
cool.
used to have a tourism slogan, and we can harp on this for a while. They change it every year, but they used to have one that translated to Colombia. The only danger is that you won't want to leave. But they had to quickly scrap it because one of the translations into other languages was Colombia. The only danger is we won't let you leave.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It seems like a pretty good slogan if
it was
English
good.
is your language. All right. So in a nutshell, I don't know if there's a nutshell answer. Why did you?
Okay. No, I stayed because I fell in love with Colombia. I mean, Colombia it's insane. It's the only country where, 10 years later, doing this professionally and traveling a ton, it's the only place that leaves me with my jaw just on the floor. So just quick primer on Colombia in terms of biodiversity by square meter. It is the most biodiverse country on the planet. It's number 2 after Brazil. It is the only country that has 3 ridges in the Andes. They're born here. They extend down to Argentina. It's the only one in South America with Caribbean and Pacific. We have 2 deserts. We have snow-capped peaks. We have plains. We have Amazon. We have the best coffee regions in the world. And that in addition to amazing big cities like Bogota and Medellin and Cartagena. We have 17 quote unquote patrimonial villages, but there's probably more that could enter on that. We have 9 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. There's more fruits and vegetables cultivated here than anywhere else. There's more indigenous tribes. There's more orchid species, more bird species, and on and on and on. And you just keep finding this stuff that is insane. So like right before the pandemic, for example, and my business partner and I, who were just like running around the country doing investigation and research, and we decided to go to this village, which was hard hit during the violence. It is about 5 hours from Medellin. There are some local flights that go there, and Anna, my business partner, is a licensed veterinarian, and some of her old colleagues told us that this village has the last 2 communities of Magdalena River manatee, and so we decided to go there. But that's what I mean. It's like you live here for years and you go, wait, there's Magdalena River manatee. And so we fly out and like all of a sudden, like I'm holding a baby capybara and seeing these manatee in this little swamp where there's literally these moving islands where you go in and then the island moves and cuts you off and you have to push the island out of the way. And then there's monkeys and jaguars and indigenous, these crazy villages. And then we ended up seeing one of the oldest hotels in the country that nobody knows exists because today it's a military battalion, but they let us in to see all this like incredible historical architecture. And it's like, maybe I'll take somebody there one day, maybe not, but this is so cool. And someday I'll have the answer to a trivia question.
Yep.
And sometimes those are the things that you have to see to be able to understand what you're talking to people about, because sometimes being able to say no is just as important as being able to say yes. And sometimes to say no, you have to go somewhere. So anyways, cool. That was a long rant.
No, what I heard there, because I feel like it's the case for me, is like this place is like ADD paradise for the ADD. There's so much stimulation. There's like legitimate, honest, healthy stimulation, regardless of whatever anybody thinks about Colombia. You can come here and you can see new things every day. If I'm working in my apartment or a co-working space, and I'm just like, I just feel a little bit bored, or it feels whatever I'm doing feels a little tedious, I can just go walk around the block and I'll see something. And I've been most of the last 3 years. And it's like, I can pretty much always find something unique. I'm in this apartment in Envigado, and this morning, I wake up to the sound of the big parrots. A bunch
the
of
macaws, the red
hanging
macaws
out here right now. And, I can see them right. I don't know if they're out there right now, but I can see them right off that's so cool. I don't even have to leave the house.
Right.
And there's just, like you said, there's so many differences to see. You can get on a bus and then one day go through over mountain passes that are spectacular in cloud forest, a desert canyon, and beach.
100%. You can see You can see, so there was an old slogan, sorry, going back, and then I will tell you one other thing that's interesting, but there used to be these old slogans, like, I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but it was essentially like, if you want the Andes, go to Peru. If you want the beach, go to Costa Rica. If you want the Amazon, go to Brazil. If you want the desert, go to Chile. If you want all of it, go to Colombia,
Go to
right?
Colombia.
But there's so much bad or misinformation here. And that's part of what we try to dispel. I'll give you two just very, very big examples, right? So one, and my wife gets so mad whenever I talk about this. She's from a town called Manizales, right? Manizales is part of the Coffee Triangle. The Coffee Triangle, or the coffee region, which everybody writes about, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right? Which everyone wants to go to, is not even one of the 6 top coffee producing regions of Colombia, right? It is not even one of the original regions, and coffee is grown all over. And there's a question for you. Where is the very first commercially producing coffee farm in Colombia?
Boy, I would just guess.
It's near Medellin. And
okay.
Antioquia is the second biggest producing region in the country after Huila, which is way down in the south, right?
Really?
And there's so many incredible places to go. And these are places that we work with that they're not touristic destinations, but we spent like a year creating a lot of these relationships to do things like go to the very first farm, which has had 3 presidents of the country as part of the family, which were the founders of the Coffee Federation.
Or where?
It's in Fredonia.
It is
in Fredonia.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Absolutely. The reason why Manizales and Pereira and Armenia exist is because these families from that region want to help the coffee conquest into the interior and be able to take coffee out near the Cauca River, right? And get it up to the Gulf of Ordoba and send it over to Europe and stuff like that, right? Or there's other things where, one of the things that frustrates me a little bit is the country has really sort of devoted itself to mass tourism. And I'll just give you a very quick example. One of the most famous places in the country that you'll see in almost every promotion for Colombia is this place called Guatapé, right? Which has got these huge lake systems, this rock. I'm sorry, there's nothing historic about Guatapé other than the fact that it's named after an old cacique or an old indigenous chieftain from the region, right? The town is not historic. The lakes are man-made to feed a hydroelectric power. Yes, the rock is beautiful and is a great place to go to take a selfie, but it's not a great place to go if you want to understand Colombia. If you're in Medellin, you can go 2 hours to Guatapé and learn nothing, or you can go an hour to Santa Fe de Antioquia, which is 500 years old. It's 3 years younger than Cartagena. It was the first capital of Antioquia. It's one of the major important spots in the country for gold and for indigenous history and for political history. And it still looks like it was cut out of time from 500 years ago, and it's recognized as one of those patrimonial villages. But where does everybody go? To Guatapé, because it's easier to take a selfie and because it's what everybody promotes. And
it's the Instagram.
It's the Instagram thing.
Hey, we got to go there. You got to go to Guatapé.
And it's laziness. We have guidebooks from back when we started the companies, from major companies. And the guidebook will say, oh, the main plaza in Guatapé was voted as the most beautiful in South America. Well, first of all, it doesn't say by whom. Secondly, I can tell you it's not even one of like the top 5 most beautiful in Antioquia. I'm pretty sure it's not the most beautiful in South America. And look, Guatapé is beautiful. I'm not taking anything away from Guatapé. Really, really beautiful. There's just so much to see and so much to do in Colombia. And with that little modicum of extra push, you can see things that are so beyond what you expect. And I think that's sort of the magic of this.
I agree. And for me, I mean, some people listening to this, maybe are able to pick up and go to a month to Colombia, stay in areas and take buses and have 10 days. They want to take their family. But I'll tell you one of the things, I mean, I've left, I came to Colombia, I was going to be here for a month, and I ended up getting around for, at least 3 months before I left. And then I came back for another thing. Then I've left a few times, but every time I leave, I'm like, I miss Colombia. And then, so I'm back in Colombia thinking, well, maybe I need to get outside and gone and stayed places. I love them. And it's because I can go, but it's still Colombia. I can go anywhere in Colombia I want on a bus, really. I mean, it's like, we've got all these pueblos up in that area.
Yeah.
And Guatapé is just one of them. But you can go down to the bus station randomly, pick a bus, just walk up to a window and say, hey, I want a ticket. Where to? I don't care. And you go get on a bus and you can come back and you can go everywhere you want on a bus for like $3 or $4.
Absolutely. It's a very Colombian thing to do as well, right? There's a local verb, which is pueblear. And pueblear is literally down the weekends to go visit different villages because they're fun. And quite frankly, and this is another big mistake people make. Look, everyone wants Rome, Florence, Venice, right? Rome, Florence, Venice of Colombia is Bogota, Medellin, Cartagena. But I always tell people, if you want to understand what Colombia is, if you want to understand Colombians, leave the city. There was this horrendous violent period from about 1950 to around 2007. That was sort of the heart of it, right? Before that 1950 initial point, we'll call it, and this is a little bit of a generalization, 80% of the Colombian population lived on the countryside, only 20% in big cities. And that is including some people who are still alive today. So everybody in Colombia is very, very attached and connected to the countryside. And you see that even within their lives in the cities. You know, it's common to go walk into a house and see a mango tree or people growing on their balcony or, you know, a lot of things like that. So definitely, like, if there's one big piece of advice to people, it's get out of the cities.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, I do well living in the city,
sure,
around the metro,
absolutely,
co-working spaces, stuff like that. And I can go out, just see different stuff. But absolutely, like, weekends roll around, it's like, get out. Or I'll take a week or two, you know, even Bucaramanga. I know it's still a city, but it's different. And there's different places. There's just so many places that I feel like I'd be here the rest of my life. I'll never run out of places. I know this is not the podcast per se.
No, that's okay.
I think it's good to share. I like, if somebody listening to this, here's the thing. Anybody that's listening to this show and decides to come to Colombia, I think they're going to have a great time and welcome them with open arms. There's some people that come to Colombia just because they just want to party. They think that that's the thing to do here, but they're not listening to this.
Right. Exactly.
You know, so anybody that's listening to this, come on. The other thing too is just that awareness of, like, a lot of people my age group seeing that Colombia. How could I go there? My parents, when I bought at one place, you got to pay some attention. I'm not going to say you can come down here and do whatever you want and no risk of anything bad happening. But man, if you like come here with open mind about just exploring and connecting with people, learning some Spanish, not hanging out and illicit things. It's like, you know, I mean, the fact I can go get on a bus, or I can get on the metro and go to the bus station, go get on a bus. There's no I'm going to say gringos. There's no gringos on the bus with me. And right. I'm perfectly fine. I'm amazing people. There's almost never gringos, maybe a young backpacking. And I constantly find myself thinking, man, there are so that are missing out on because of stories they have in their head or images that they saw years and years ago. And anybody could be, come on, this is so
Absolutely.
Cool. I guess I'm happy they're not all doing it, but.
Right. But there's a lot more. I mean, look, Colombia had well over 6 million tourists last year. There's a lot to say. There's a lot of statistics that we can cite in terms of safety here. And over the last 10 years, it is, you know, largely unchanged, which is great. That means there's stability in this. What I would say is, like, if you go to Bogota, you're going to one of the 20 biggest cities in the world, right? If you come to Medellin, the statistics are a little less certain on this. There's somewhere between like 3 and 5 million people here, right? These are big cities. So use big city rules. If you don't speak the language, if you don't know where you're going, I mean, don't whip out a whole bunch of cash or, you know, be really, really flashy. And I would tell the same thing somebody from Colombia going to a lot of cities in North America or Europe.
You know, this might be interesting for listeners. I can't tell you how many Colombians I've had conversations with that are terrified of going to the U.S. A lot of them have family, friends, you know, some of them have been. But typically when we talk about, you know, our differences and where I'm from, where they're from, it's not about Colombia and how to be safe, dangerous, or whatever. They're like, man, what is going on in the U.S.? This is usually in Spanish, right? But, you know, like, oh, I wouldn't go. I'm afraid if I went to the U.S., this is going to happen to me. And that's going to happen to me. And you're right. I mean, every place has its own risks. But we let our minds get so wrapped
we
up
let them
in
wander.
stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the chances doing the stuff I do, I feel like but I also have things that I'm doing, the chance of depressed and regretful is really high. So it's, you know, you got to balance things out. Whether it's
I think it just comes down to like basic things. Just be a good person. You know, the very, very grand probability is things are just great.
We tend to get back kind of the energy we put out.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you want to show off your wealth and try and impress the Colombian ladies, and that's your purpose for coming here, you're probably going to attract negative stuff. If you come here, man, I want to learn the language, I want to explore, I want to see authentic things, then authentic things just have a way of showing up for you know, and it's so cool. And I mean, I've had people stop me on the street because I had cash hanging out of my pocket. And like, senor, you're like, oh, they'll stop you, you know, and tell you, or you drop something, you know, or I had, when I first got here, I left some change on went to one of the panaterias, coffee shop was called that. I always used to go to the coffee shop with my grandparents and I'd always leave a few coins on the waitress. Like the first time I went to a coffee shop here, I went and paid and I left a few coins on the table and I walked out. And you already probably know what happened. The lady chased me out. She's like, hey, you left your money. It was just like, they're so sweet. I'm sure there's some bad ones, but I haven't met any.
No, I think the important thing to know, and this is true with a lot of countries, is look, there is extreme poverty in Colombia. There's also extraordinary wealth, right? And I think a lot of people come down here thinking that the extraordinary poverty is the norm and that they're going to be able to impress people, by flipping out their wallet and thinking that that's great. That's not true. Yeah, you'll impress some people, but look, Colombia has phenomenal education, excellent healthcare, really intelligent industries. And most of those people are not impressed by shenanigans, right? Yeah. Like they just want to live their lives like people in any other country. And I think, you just got to understand what you're getting into.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came here 10 years.
I did.
And you started the business. How did that kind of come about? You'd mentioned that you'd spent some time with your partner around.
No. I came in, I didn't know anybody. I ended up meeting my business partner, Santiago and Ana. And back in 2014, we were very sort of upset with two big things that were occurring. One was that the vast majority of tourism that was coming to Medellin in particular, Colombia in general, was illicit tourism. So people who were looking for prostitution or drugs, Pablo Escobar, those types of things, right? And sort of ignoring everything that we spent the last hour talking about. And then the other thing that we noted, sort of two elements, we'll call it A and B. A was that people who were looking for ecotourism were not coming to Colombia, even though we're, number one or number two in ecotourism based on how you judge it. They were going to countries that are a lot less biodiverse: Costa Rica, Ecuador, Chile, Peru, Thailand, things like that. And the other thing we noticed was the immense potential for tourism to be one of the main two contributors to the country's GDP. We saw this very sort of delicate flex point where the country could really bounce forward or bounce back. And what we wanted to do was be part of that impulse to push things forward. And what we realized was a lot of people weren't coming here because there wasn't a good tourist infrastructure for it. There weren't good places to stay outside of the big cities. There weren't good, routes or people to guide beyond sort of those main destinations. And so we took it upon ourselves to be part of that sort of, we'll call it like a new vanguard of people who were doing that. And that was really our impulse in designing Cannua. And our philosophy is, look, our competition is not Cartagena. Our competition is not Medellin. Our competition is not the hotel down the road in Marinilla. We've told people, we'll help you put something else because that's what's going to help create a market and bring people in. Our competition is Costa Rica. Our competition is Peru. Our competition is Ecuador. We want the people who go to visit those places and who consume those products to come to Colombia and do those exact same types of activities, not the exact same type, but like within those sectors, we want them to do that here. We believe in something called co-opetition. So instead of and the idea is that we cooperate within our competition, right? So even with like Cannua, with the hotel, we were co-founders of a soft brand alliance called Secretos de Colombia, and it's a soft brand alliance of some of the best boutique hotels in the country. And we work together. We share best practices. Sometimes we share our booking systems. We help sell each other. And we're not directly affiliated. We don't share books, but those best practices are what's helped all of us get, move the needle forward.
Right. Because if you're, one of only a hand operation, you've got a great operation, but the first barrier you got, I don't know if I want to call it a barrier, but the first point is get people to Colombia.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you
100%.
A great eco lodge in the middle of Colombia.
If people don't want to go to Colombia,
it's the same reason that, I still see it sometimes today, but I remember growing up, one of the first questions I had about business was why is the McDonald's right across the street?
Right.
I remember, God, that made no sense. You have the Burger King a mile down there, but that intersection becomes a place where people go, I want some fast food. I haven't decided what fast food I want yet, but I know that up on the corner of Main and 3rd, there's a Wendy's, a McDonald's, a Burger King, and an Arby's. So I go there looking for food. I don't know if this is a great analogy or not. But,
yeah, it's perfect.
But if people aren't thinking, oh, Colombia is where we should be going to do eco stuff, then it doesn't really matter. And the only way you're going to get people to think of Colombia as a great place to do eco stuff is not if there's a bunch of eco lodges or eco operators. It's if they're good, great,
right,
eco operators.
Correct.
Because here's the thing, they already thought this out. I know everybody listening to this thought it out, but I like to talk. So if, somebody goes to Colombia and does an eco tour type of thing in Colombia, and then they go home and they tell their friends, hey, we went to Colombia. It was amazing. We had this amazing experience. And that plants a seed. Their friend goes on maybe a year or two later. They're like, remember someone, I may not even remember who it was. Someone told me Colombia was great, ecotourism. And they're not going to necessarily go back to the same lodge. They're going to Colombia. They may end up. It's like, I guess what I'm saying is if your competition or your co-opetition, if they're doing a good job and people are going back raving about Colombia, then that's good for you too, right? It's the concept.
Absolutely. I mean, look, people have a big barrier to entry with Colombia. First of all, they have to hear about it. Most people don't know about it. Then they have to get over their own preconceptions about what it is, about safety. And then you have to get to the point where they get here without there being some major thing coming out in the news, because people will look for any excuse to try and cancel, whether it was Zika, whether it was, a visa tiff between the US and Colombia, whether it was things going on along the Venezuelan border. We just had people who were very concerned about what was going on with Venezuela very recently. And this has actually happened every few years. And I can explain to them, there's fires going on in Los Angeles, and that's absolutely horrendous. It doesn't mean you can't travel to New York, right? So it's sort of the same thing here.
Or even Arizona.
Or even Arizona.
Nevada.
Right.
Or even other parts of California.
But that's hard for people to internalize. Yeah, people have been hearing bad news coming out of Colombia for a really long time that, they like hearing the good news, but it takes a while to sort of accept it. And you're right, that's a huge task at hand. And it takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of good properties and a lot of good operators in order to redo that reputation. And a lot of good travelers.
And the flip side is a bad operator can undo.
Yes.
A lot of work. One bad operator bringing home a person every few days that had a bad experience that's going to go on social media. I went to the people there were rude. Nobody spoke English, all this stuff. Because we all know that the unhappy person is much more likely to talk than I think it's like 10 to 1 or something. It's like,
good operators too. I mean, stuff happens, and this is not Western Europe. And so you get consumers of 20-star hotels in Europe who want to come here, which is awesome. And those are the types of people that we want. But there is a level of expectation setting because there's not, we'll call it, I'll be 100% honest. And this is the clientele that we work with. I can charter planes. I can get private yachts. I can shut down museums and go around with the curators. But there's not going to be a hotel that's the equivalent of JK Place Rome or JK Place Paris in Colombia. It just doesn't exist. Right. And I'm going to do everything within our power to give you the best activity and experience and service that you can possibly get. But, the travelers have to be a little bit open to things as well. And sometimes, even though we do everything correct, there's some things that are out of control.
You can't remove some of the stuff that see on the road, or when they go out on an excursion, you can't control everything. You want authentic. This is Colombia.
Even at the high end, I won't name names. So there was a really expensive, very well-known, very high-end hotel in Colombia that charged clients an exorbitant amount during festive, which is the last week of the year. And we had a family that paid quite a sum to come down, right? And, they come in and, it was a grandmother, her daughter, and then the grandchildren, right? And they all come in and they show up and they say the grandmother doesn't have a room. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they're calling the agent furious. The agent's calling me going, what the F? And it turned out that the hotel they put the last name in wrong for the grandmother because she had a different last name. And so they put it under a different reservation. And even though we booked everything together and it's like, it got resolved, there was no issue. In Colombia, those sorts of things happen.
That's a tough one because people here, everybody in the world is different, but we're mostly alike. But I've noticed definitely if you ask for something, who knows what kind of response you're going to get. And you may have to figure out just to find somebody else to ask the same question to, you get a completely different answer. And it's not because they're necessarily being lazy or rude or whatever. It seems very, I want to be careful what I say because I live here. It's not always a lot of creative problem solving. Oftentimes it's just kind of, no, this is the way it is. I remember just a short, I just remember I went to a panaderia or whatever, and I was asked best Spanish I could if they had any lemon lime soda, like a Sprite or 7-Up or whatever. And she's like, nope. No, no tango, no hay. I'm like, so what's that? ¿Qué es eso in the cooler? And she opens it up, pulls it out and says this. And I'm like, yeah. And she said, it's lemon water. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. So I bought it. I opened it. It's carbonated. It's 7-Up, basically. So you gotta, and okay. But it's part of what I love about, I have to remind myself sometimes. It's like, okay, the things I love about Colombia can be a little frustrating.
Sure. I'll give you another quick example.
Doing business here, no better. I'll
give you a quick example. I love soda water, gassy water, right? Mm-hmm. There's one brand. If you ask for agua con gas, there's a brand called Britannia. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, locally, that's not considered to be agua con gas, even though that's exactly what it is. You have to order a soda. Or you might walk into a place that only sells Britannia and you say, do you have agua con gas? And they'll say, no. And then you'll look and you'll be like, can I have a Britannia? And they'll be like, yes, of course. It's just, sounds so and it comes down to exposure. I mean, you go to a place like Paris and they've been doing luxury for centuries, right? And Colombia has not, and that's okay. That's part of the adventure. It's part of the journey.
It's charming. I mean, I'm not 100% sure I got this straight, but they've got Águila beer here, and they've got Águila Light, and then they've got Águila Original. And my understanding, whatever I've been able to figure out, maybe you can help verify this, but if it's Águila Original or original in a can, it's Águila Original. If it's in a bottle, even though the label says Águila Original, it's ordered as Águila Negra, which is dark. But my understanding is it's the same beer. It's just whether it's in a can or in a bottle. But if you ask for it negra, they give you the bottle. Is that right? Am I missing something, or do you even know?
So Águila Negra is the original, and Águila Light is the light beer, which absolutely nobody should drink because it's disgusting. So if you ask for negra, you're asking for the original, whether it's in a can or whether it's in a bottle. What is weird is that it's not a dark beer. So negra would be like a dark beer, and it's not a dark beer.
And someone told me, well, it's because the bottle is dark. I'm like, okay. So if it's in a bottle, it's negra. If it's in a can, it's original. And if it's okay, thank you for clarifying that. And just the fact that it's so hard to figure that out because I've asked 10 people. This is not the first person, and I've gotten 10 different answers. So I kind of extrapolate. I remember someone saying the bottle was dark and that's why it's called negra. Okay.
No.
And then I said, is it the same as what's in the can? Yes. Anyway.
When all else fails, just point.
Yeah. That's pretty much, there's a lot of pointing going on because, every market seems to all the same thing, something. And, especially if you change cities, you got to start over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But okay. So kind of talked about your business, why you did it. Cannua is kind of along the same lines. Is there anything specific that you want to share that kind of about your decision to do Cannua? Or I think we've already touched on quite a bit. And by the way, I met your Santiago.
Yeah.
In an event a couple months ago, which is really how you and I had connected. And he's great. He's super.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And he spends a lot of time at.
He's there just about every day. Okay. He's there about every day. Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, look, we started these to do things right, to do things the way that they should be. Cannua is special because it'll get you to a small corner of the country that you would never have a chance to see otherwise. And really, authenticity is what we look for. And we try to give people experiences that they would never be able to access or find on their own, whether that's at the lodge or whether that's with True Colombia. Cannua was a way to show people that things could be done differently. Just recently, the Colombian countryside has been, I don't know if threat's the right word, but it's had this danger of takeover either by corporate farming or overdevelopment. And a lot of children of farmers don't want to be farmers anymore, and they want to move to the big city and get other jobs. Increases sort of that threat. And what we wanted to do was protect the countryside, reforest. And what we've done is, look, it's an ex-conflict zone, and we have 30 families that depend on the job that we give Cannua. And you can do those sorts of things in Colombia. You can have an incredible, unforgettable experience. You don't really have to sacrifice anything from what you're doing. And the amazing thing with it too is, like, when people are putting together itineraries, you can stay in Medellin for a few days, then you can go up to Cannua. And it's like you're getting two totally different destinations without having to go to the airport.
With the same,
that's what
with the same flight.
Right, exactly.
Brian, I gotta share that. And you and I, right before I pushed the record button, I asked you if you've got any hard stop times after that. You've got any? And you told me, you said, Jason, I've got about 45 minutes. I've got this other call, but I can be a little late. And I said, I'm gonna keep an eye on the clock, and I'm about 40 minutes or so. I'm gonna start wrapping things up. And what I realized, Brian, is hopefully it was worth using extra time with me, because
it was.
What I realized was this was a fascinating conversation. I totally lost track of everything else going on in the world. And so I really appreciate your patience with me. And I'm going to ask you, is there anything else that you want to throw out there before we actually?
No, this is great. We should wrap up so I can actually make the phone call. But I appreciate the extra time on your side as well.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and please apologize to the person that you're getting ready to.
I will. No,
I'll see you soon. Hopefully here in Medellin or up at the lawn.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Take care.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.